Hello everybody, welcome to What Culture. I'm Scott and I went to see Tenet. I'm one of the only people that sort of braved the anxiety gauntlet that is going to the cinema in the modern day. But I wanted to see what is one of my favourite filmmakers' new movies, Tenet, Christopher Nolan's Tenet, and sadly, it's a big old disappointment. It's one of the most convoluted, overstuffed, terribly edited, badly mixed on the sound level movies in quite some time. And it's one of the things where, you can kind of tell that at this point in his career, Christopher Nolan is known as, the time guy, the guy that goes into all these high concept things, multi-dimensional, time-skipping things that we're all going to stitch together later on. And even when he did Dunkirk, it was like, well, I'm going to do it in 3 different timelines or 3 different versions of time, and you're just going to have to figure out the overall timeline when you're done. Tenet is very much taken that idea and just running with it. A lot of people have already described it as Inception on roids, and it kind of is that. But the thing that completely drags it down is that it is only that concept. That's all there is. There are no characters here, no payoff, no narrative grounding whatsoever. You're very much thrown into the thick of it. And I'm not going to go into any spoilers whatsoever here. I'm just going to skirt around things. Because I think if you are going to go see Tenet, you should see it for the concept. It's the one thing that it has. And it's one of those things where at the end of the day, when you've seen it and you go to the end of the credits and you're just sort of left piecing pieces together, because, across the 150-minute runtime, you are sat there going like, what the living hell is going on? And the movie fundamentally doesn't make sense until you know the full picture. And in that way, it is quite bold in terms of, look, he's making something that is almost directly going against the fundamental tenets, lol, of how you make a film in terms of a 3-act structure, in terms of, like I said, narrative grounding in regards to character motivation and character backstories and empathy and reasons to care. But at the same time, unlike Inception, where going on that ride was actually fun, where at the very beginning, you were sort of, Ariadne was very much the audience surrogate, and it was like, look, here are the rules of the world, as an introductory segment into how sort of dream skipping or whatever the hell it was called in Inception works, and we're now going to run with that from here. It just doesn't come together in Tenet whatsoever. They actually skirt over a lot of the, expository scenes and have multiple characters tell main character John David Washington, whose name is the protagonist. That's how much he doesn't care about characters in this movie. It's literally the concept. That's all that matters and nothing else. You're literally going to go, oh, it's a crazy time. It's a time-involving thing, and let's just figure it out. And that's it. There's multiple times where characters tell, John David Washington and the audience not to care. You're told over and over again, stop trying to figure this out. Just feel it. Just go with it. And that's, maybe some people will like that, and the roller coaster feeling of just watching such an sensory onslaught of over the top action scenes and back and forth between characters and things like that. Maybe that's enough of a rush on its own to sustain you, but for me, he doesn't land the foundation of the film whatsoever in a way that Inception did, or even Interstellar did before it started messing with it too much towards the end. And that stuff completely undoes everything because you don't care about the characters. You don't really know what's going on. You don't really know who you have like a villain character played by Kenneth Branagh, but he's part of a larger thing, and it's just never really brought into view. It's more like you have to listen out for it towards the end of the film and go, oh, okay, so the last sort of 2 hours were hinging on that, and that's why all of this was leading to this. It just doesn't really work. It's almost like retrospective narrative groundwork, and it doesn't really work. Like I said, it goes against the way you make a film, and it's Christopher Nolan. It's not like this stuff wasn't intentional. But speaking of listening out for things, there are fundamental problems with this in terms of the editing is a complete mess. I have no idea how long the original cut was, but this thing feels butchered to get into even 150 minutes runtime. It really is just lightning quick, just going from place to place, not in a way that feels intelligible. It just feels like it's flying to a destination without sort of letting you catch up. It's allergic to establishing shots. You have no idea where anybody is, even though we are jumping between different countries in the first sort of 40 minutes or so. There's no real sense of this globe-trotting adventure. You're just one living room over here, jump to a restaurant over here, and then, oh, by the way, we're in this different country, I guess. It doesn't really come together very well. Also, the sound mixing, completely horrible. It's just for weird, I don't know why, but there's so many, like I said, there are those expository scenes, But most of them, especially in the beginning, when you're struggling to understand what's going on, and John David Washington's character needs to know what's going on for the sake of his mission, a lot of those scenes where characters are explaining things are done with the backdrop of just like one of these scenes takes place on a sailboat where all you can hear is just crashing engines and waves and everything going crazy, and the score is like rising underneath. And it's just a big old mess. It's just a big thing just coming at you, just going like, hey, look, this is a Christopher Nolan movie. And I'm saying that as a dude that absolutely loves the guy. But you, at some point, you can sort of see him. It's like he's addressing his identity as a filmmaker at this point. He's pretty far into his career. And it almost feels like the way Tarantino just threw some female bare feet on the screen throughout Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where it's just like, yep, this is what I do. If you're paying for one of my movies, you know what you're going to be in for, and that is why I pay for one of his movies. In terms of Nolan's case, but it just doesn't come together, and it's just sad because there's obviously a humongous budget on this. There are obviously some fairly unique, cool ideas in terms of high octane chases. There's a very cool highway scene. The core concept involving mixing with time and why are certain objects reversing and things like that. The idea of playing with entropy itself does mess with your brain. If I was going to make a video game reference, it's kind of like Jonathan Blow's Braid. Where if you ever played Braid, you have to fundamentally rethink the way that time works, the way that chronology works, to understand the film or understand the game. And that's the same here. The concept itself is the part where you're supposed to get the most enjoyment out of it and then build characters on top of that. But sadly, because of the way that they skirt over everything and like I said, the mixing and the fact that it's edited so poorly and the fact that it's in this insane rush to get somewhere that, you're like, I just want to go on this journey with you. It sadly completely crumbles and it's just not enjoyable to watch unfold. Another gaping problem is characters, because you do have really good performances from John David Washington, Robert Pattinson. I think she's called, it's Elizabeth Debicki, who is just, well, she's completely underused, even though you can tell that she has a great range and she's clearly going for something in terms of, being this sort of strong female, essentially lead. She's pretty much a main character. But the way that they use her, like the way that the story is just so threadbare, where Kenneth Branagh's evil Russian dude is just evil Russian dude 101. And like I said, Elizabeth Debicki is just like, that's, his partner, and she's just thrown into the damsel in distress role. And it's just like, well, we're just supposed to care because it's a woman with a kid, and that's it. That's all you get. And, it's just like it's a plot point. It's just a prop. It doesn't feel like a human. It doesn't feel like someone who has any agency in this world. It just feels like someone who needs to be chased and saved, a box to be ticked. And like I said before, John David Washington's character is called the protagonist. And that stuff, you can just kind of tell what he's doing. It's pretty much Christopher Nolan just going, look, you thought Inception was too crazy. You thought Interstellar wasn't crazy enough. I've done Dunkirk. I've done the easy movie. I had a little bit of a time, play with some time in that movie. And here's just me, writ large, barefoot on the screen, Tarantino style, because I'm just going to do the most over-the-top thing possible. And it doesn't matter about characters. It only matters about concept. And that is a massive blow to the likes of why Inception was so great, because you cared about those characters at the heart of such a complex concept. It has to have both. And as much as it might be this rebellious statement against like I said, the tenets, of filmmaking, I would just say that you need those things. I'm going to need to care about what's going on, and I don't just care about the concept. That cannot be primary. It needs something else. And so even when you had something as complex as like Memento, you still cared about Guy Pearce's character. It's the only way that those things work, and Tenet sadly has nothing other than its core concept, which even post-credits isn't that much fun to pick apart. And it certainly wasn't fun to watch it unfold. To quickly touch on the core concept stuff, it is fascinating. It's very much wrapped up in pop culture science. There are certain theories and things thrown out there that you'll recognize the name of. If you spend any time online in the last sort of 10-ish years, when we've started to sort of broach more high concept philosophical ideas or psychological ideas and things that get thrown around, various paradoxes and things like that, again, I'm going to stay completely vague, you'll recognize the name of certain things. And it's quite cool, in a way, seeing Nolan sort of apply these, like I said, these almost pop culture ideas of sci-fi, science fiction theory, time theory, things like that, applied to a movie in very much the same way that Ridley Scott did with The Martian, where it was like, okay, let's take these more grounded examples of science and how people might survive in a climate that's completely unyielding. That movie was very much held up as a yay science movie, and I think that's kind of what he's going for here, more of a theoretical sense. But yeah, I can still always come back to the fact that it doesn't support the entire movie. It is interesting to hear brainy people say brainy things and understand them eventually, but it's not. It doesn't replace character development, character motivation, character empathy, or a general sense of emotion and relatability throughout a film. You are going to need both things. So yeah, it is one of those things on the concept side where if you just want to feel confused for an hour, for 2 hours, 2.5 hours, it definitely can do that. But I didn't find that remotely satisfying. And even, like I said, even after the fact, even when you go back and go, okay, so this was this, and this means this, and this is why this all makes sense, you do need some sort of enjoyable component to that first journey through the film. It makes more sense on a second viewing, and it'll only make more sense going forward, but it is set up to be as confusing as hell, and it hangs everything on its concept and its concept alone. So with all that stuff in mind, and again, it sucks, Nolan's one of my favorite filmmakers. I have everything he's ever done. And I love him for going completely overboard. I still appreciate the fact that this movie exists. I love that something with this much money and this big of a scale can be done and advertised to a mass audience. It just doesn't work. And so it doesn't work on a fundamental level. Sound mixing to editing to character development to the fact that you care to just being completely baffled and confused and knowing that he's telling you to stop caring, which is just stupid. I'm gonna go 2-star. I don't think it nails anything other than its own bombast, and that is outside of everything that should matter. You only care about bombast in a film if you have worthwhile components elsewhere, narrative grounding, emotional attachment, etc. And like I said, him calling his own character the protagonist, having characters refer to him as that, it's reinforcing the fact that you're only going to be confused. That's the only reason you would buy a ticket. Just go along, see the new Nolan movie and be confused. And maybe that's all he can be in the eyes of a mass audience, but that also really, really sucks. And this is not a well-made movie. It's nowhere near the heights of Inception. And but sadly, worthwhile. It's also not as bad as Dark Knight Rises, but at least Dark Knight Rises had characters. If you've seen Tenet, let me know what you think down in the comments below. Maybe you're just raging at the fact that something you've been looking forward to for so long is actually just a little bit naff. Let me know what you think. I'm sure I'll be getting some communications going forward. For now, I've been Scott from whatculture.com, and I'll catch you soon.